Hello and welcome to another edition of Video Games to the Max. I am your host, Sean Garmer, here with me. Today is Randy Isbelle.
Hello, hello. I'm back.
Yes, glad to have you back. And man, we got plenty of stuff to talk about. This is like the last big release window of the year. You got
Mm-hmm.
Super Mario Brothers RPG Remake. I'll be talking about that. I'm only like in a couple hours in, and Persona 5 Tactica. That also came out the same day, and it's on Game Pass, so I've been playing that as well. Randy's been playing some games. He'll talk about that. And we got the big Game Awards nominations. They are out. We're going to
Yes.
give our thoughts on what has been presented here from the 120 plus outlets that have voted. Maybe give some predictions too. And then there's some other. This is like the microcosm of gaming this year. We have some really great stuff to talk about, and then we got some crappy layoffs to talk about again. So yes, let's do that right now, right after this.
You are listening to Video Games to the Max.
All right, so just let's go ahead and get this thing out of the way here. Housekeeping. If this is your first time listening, we do appreciate you just as long, even if you're a long time listener, both things are very valid, and we appreciate you just listening or watching. You can do so live, usually around Thursday or Friday, around the 12:30ish Eastern time slot. Even though next week we're going to be on Wednesday because of the Thanksgiving holiday. That way, I'm not editing and stuff on Thanksgiving, and also doing the show on Black Friday isn't necessarily the best thing. So, and my daughter is behind me, so she messed up her ankle again. So if you see another body here, she's all right. She's just resting, and my dog will probably move the window a bunch of times, I'm sure as well. But either way, uh, you can go subscribe, follow all that stuff, Dojo Network on YouTube, and you not only get what we do here, you get the Radlitzer Broadcasting folks, which they do a great job, especially on the movie and TV review side. So pretty much like anything that comes out, especially movie wise, they have a review pretty on the spot. Like in the next couple of days, they already did the Marvels. I'm sure that, which I can't think of. I'm sure they're going to do a Thanksgiving review like for next week, the Thanksgiving movie, I should say. And they've been doing the TV shows as well. So go check that out over there on the channel. And you also got Tactica. They keep up with the anime stuff. So make sure you go check them out as well. All the new anime that comes out every season, they're reviewing a lot of it, and they do a great job. So check them out too. And of course, if you want to listen with your ears, which I still do a lot, especially during the workday, you can do that too. Just go subscribe, Video Games to the Max. Anytime we do a show, it will be here for you. So that being said, and as I will turn off my fan in a second here because I forgot that I have it on.
I
Let's
can't
go.
hear it, so I think you're okay.
Oh, you can't hear it? Okay, I think we're
Yeah.
good. The problem is a lot of times we say we can't hear things, and then when I'm sitting there doing the audio recording, you
Then
want
you can hear it. I
But
have to say, I know. I mean, just real quick, I know StreamYard has come out with some stuff with the noise cancellation things that
yeah, they're doing a
seem to
great
work all right.
job with like they touch up your face when you do the camera, and I love that they keep like
Yeah.
people use OBS, and I totally understand.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you want a version that's not that expensive and you don't want to have to mess with stuff, StreamYard is great. Not
Yeah.
trying to do a cheap plug for them or whatever. They really are
They're
really
great.
good. Um, so let's go ahead and I guess give them the tease for the new stuff. You've been playing some Cocoon.
Yeah, absolutely. That game, you put that into my atmosphere a couple weeks ago, and I absolutely loved that game. We had so much fun. The girlfriend and I sat in like 2 or 3 different sessions. It's really short, but I don't know how many times in the 3 some hours that I played this game where I went, "Well, that is goddamn clever." Like the puzzles
Mhm.
are interesting enough where they're not super easy, but at no point did I ever have to look anything up. You just kind of had to rack your brain around it. They do such a great job of combining different elements from earlier puzzles that really work well together. So you're basically running around with these orbs that are also kind of their own worlds, and then you combine them in weird ways to make their powers work with each other. And it's just the whole game is so clever. It makes you wish that it was longer, but it was like also the perfect length. I do wish there was a bit more like story based around it. There's not, I mean, the atmosphere is fantastic and you don't get stuck like going through cutscenes or anything. So I'm fine with that. But I just more atmospheric storytelling I would have liked to know. Because at the end, I'm like, I don't even know what this game was about. You're just a little butterfly dude that was trying to create the circle of life, basically, and then you could just continue on and so on and so forth. But it is so awesome, and it's such a really good game. Um, it's it's on Game Pass, which is great. I 100%ed it, which once again makes me realize how much I love PlayStation and that the wonderful feeling of getting the platinum trophy and getting that sound
Yeah.
as satisfying on Xbox. It's like, oh, you got your last trophy, your last achievement. Nothing.
I'm
It's
really
like
surprised that no one has ever thought of,
just make
if we're gonna take one thing from Sony, let's make them feel like it's a big deal to 100% something on achievements. And
Xbox does a great job with their achievements for when you get a rare one. You get the
right,
cool
exactly.
sound and the little gem. Nothing for when you get 100%. So it was just uh, again, as a guy that likes to do the side stuff and trophies are fun to collect and stuff. It was just like, oh, I wanted another feeling. But I highly recommend Cocoon for anyone out there that likes any kind of puzzle game. Again, at least for me, it was that perfect blend of it. I got stuck at a couple points trying to figure out a puzzle, but it wasn't like The Witness where you either had to look it up in a guide or you were there for a week. So it
Right.
was that perfect blend of difficult, but not too difficult. And it's so clever
And you,
throughout the
you can
entire
see
game.
kind of how the puzzles work, and like it kind of shows you like what you sort of need to be doing
Mhm.
just enough to where you'll get it. And then, oh, okay, I might have to travel up a bit. I might have to go to like, do the little time travel thing where you go to another
Mhm.
world and figure something out
Yeah.
and take the orb back or whatever, which that's an awesome mechanic, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
I know Ratchet
It
Clank
get
did that and all that, but
yeah. It gets a
that's
little over the top
right.
near the end of the game where it gets a bit complicated, not as far as the puzzles, but just what you have to do to complete the puzzle because you
Yeah.
have a multitude of orbs at this point and they all do different things and there's so many different steps you have to go with moving the orbs in different spots just to clear one puzzle. But they do such a good job of introducing an element, letting you get used to that element and then expanding on it, and then it all works together so well. It's again, I think I got 100% on this in just over 3 hours is what the Xbox said my game time was. So it's very short, but it's fantastic.
That's awesome that you enjoyed it and were able to
Mhm.
complete it and everything. Again, hey, there's those indie games on Game Pass. People go check them out. You
Yes.
might find the next thing that you really love, and you didn't even know that you did until you played it.
Mhm.
So you've also been playing some more known things. Interesting to get your thoughts on Spider-Man the 2, because the last time I had you on, you had basically just started it.
Just started.
So are you
This
done with it,
Yeah,
or
I've platinumed this game. This game, I have not had a ton of time. However, I kept finding time to play Spider-Man, like staying up later at night because it just while it doesn't do a lot new, I will say the second half of the game they introduce elements that were not in the first two Spider-Man games. Um, so that was nice. But it just felt like a comfort food for me. I absolutely loved Spider-Man and Miles Morales and had so much fun swinging through New York. I do understand the criticisms that it's just the same game, and there were points where it felt like, okay, like I am reaching my end of of this section of Spider-Man. So hopefully when they do get to the eventual Spider-Man 3, they go in a different direction just to change it up a little bit. But I really like how they compacted everything. Because I think there was so much busy work in the first 2 games that there's still busy work to do in Spider-Man 2 if you choose to do so, but so much of it it's far less. Like the crimes that are going on are not integral to collecting things. I think I've listened one time when Mark was talking about it, where he was a little frustrated that the suits don't have their own special powers. I kind of like it because I just was able to mess around with the suit. So I'm just going to change it. And I got a new suit. I'll swing around with this for a little bit. I got my favorites that I like to look at, or which ones I wanted to have in a cutscene. Because some of those suits do not look good in cutscenes. And I didn't want to have to be forced to wear those suits just because they have a special power and I need to unlock them so that I can start combining them with other suits. It was just, they simplified things, which was so great. I do think Peter and Miles play different enough that when you were switching between the two, they felt different. And it wasn't just, I'm just playing Spider-Man and it doesn't matter which one is which. They both had their positives and negatives. The story is really, really good. It's not going to be, when we get to the Game Awards, it's not going to win Game of the Year. It probably won't be the top of my list. And my list is much smaller than most that are in this industry. But it's just one of those comfort foods that's just so good. And they do such a great job with it. And Insomniac has this formula down. And it's just, I really enjoyed it.
What do you think? Like, does the Venom, because Mark felt like the Venom stuff kind of just doesn't really do much in the game. Do you feel like it adds a lot to?
I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people want a standalone game of Venom, kind of like Miles Morales. I don't know if I'd play a full game as Venom.
Yeah.
But that little there, I mean, spoilers, I guess, but there's a segment where you get to play as Venom for 10, 15 minutes. It was a blast just because it was completely different. It was just kind of that shocking, cool moment. But I think I would agree. It's not game changing by any means. You're just stronger and you move a bit slower, and you just, instead of finessing your way around people and flipping around and shooting webs, you're just stomping the holy hell out of people. But yeah, it's I would not argue it to be like some game-changing game that'll redefine the history of video games, but it's really good comfort food as far as video gaming goes, especially for what I like in games.
Yeah, it's a sequel that expands a bit on both games, but then also kind of gives you more of what you already are used to, and that's fine too. We can have I think that is a valid argument of, does every game that's up for Game of the Year, especially when we're talking about like the Game Awards, that they're trying to be like the Oscars of gaming, does that need to be considered? Should that even be nominated when you're just basically iterating on the same game and just adding some things? And that whole argument of it being DLC is silly. Like, it's definitely not that. We've seen games. I've talked about a game that does feel it was supposed to be DLC and it feels like DLC. The same thing with that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 game. The single player there feels like that. So, like, I think we don't need to be going into that direction, but I do think that's a good idea to think about, for when we talk about Game Awards and things like that, of why maybe this is not necessarily the highest of highs when it comes to Game of the Year talk.
And spoilers when we get to Game Awards, name me the non-sequel that is up for Game of the Year.
There is none.
Nope.
Yeah, there's none. So that's very interesting for this year. But yeah, like you've also been playing another sequel, Alan Wake 2 as well?
No, I'm playing the original.
The regular Alan Wake. Okay.
I'm playing the original because I want to play Alan Wake 2. I played Control, which I guess is part of the Alan Wake world, but I've never played Alan Wake before, so I'm playing Alan Wake Remastered, I guess. I am an hour in. I am so like I've got to the cabin and kind of been in and out of the world once or whatever,
Yeah.
his nightmares or whatever. I'm so early on in this. It's kind of where I was with Spider-Man a few weeks ago, but I really want to get to Alan Wake 2 before the end of the year once I get my schooling is done here in a couple of weeks. So that is like a game I really want to get into, but I'm a stickler for, especially with these kind of games where I need to know the backstory and I need to know what's going on. So
Yeah.
I will just say, again, I've done very little gameplay in it. It's been a lot of story. It is definitely one that I have to remember how long ago the original game came out, because it is janky at times as far as
Yes.
the voice acting. You could tell was not to the standards that voice acting is today. You could definitely tell that they were just doing line by line instead of like recording full scenes, because the voice actors will go in just weird, just their ups and downs throughout a conversation are going, this doesn't sync well. But again, to remember when the original game came out, I have to that was the standard.
Yeah, we're talking about 13 years ago. That's a while.
So I'll put that in my mind. But the one thing that I'm worried about so far at the game is I don't know if I'm going to be able to stand Alan Wake narrating everything to me. It's like, oh, this cool subtle thing, let me just talk about it for a minute. I'm like, no, because
I'm worried living in his writing, basically.
No,
and,
and it could end up being really cool, or it could just drive me absolutely insane. I'm an hour in. I am very much in the wait and see situation, but I'm excited because I know you've been playing. You've been playing the second one.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get to that.
There's probably more combat in that game than there is in 2. It's later on you'll get to where there's more and more taken. And that one doesn't feel. You're definitely gonna get the survival horror feel from the second one, at least the ambiance and the that same scary feeling. That game is not necessarily. I didn't find it scary. It's more about it wants you to experience the story, and it is more actiony kind of. The DLC takes it to a whole nother level. That's really like super actiony, but this one kind of melds the two together. I thought about replaying that, and then I was like, I think I remember getting halfway through the game, and there was just parts where I was just kind of like, all right, I think I'm just gonna. I watched a big, like one of those big timeline recap things that were 2 hours or whatever, and got the whole, because they have a whole prequel like web series that they made this before Alan Wake, and then you have Alan Wake, and then they have like a comic book that kind of ties things together, and of course the stuff with Control, right? Because there's a DLC that comes after Control where you actually see Alan Wake in the world with I forgot her name, Jennifer or Jessica or
from Control.
The main.
What was her name?
I'm gonna be sitting. I heard it a bunch of times and I can't think of it right now. But then you find out like the cop
Jesse.
from Jesse, the cop from Alan Wake is also in there, and it's the psychiatrist guy, and like, so they found a great way to like meld all that together, and then you kind of get all of that in Alan Wake 2. So it does you can play Alan Wake 2 without having played Alan Wake 1, but you're not going to get as much like understanding and the cool stuff of just like Alan Wake 2, especially when you get to because the saga stuff is very much it's survival horror. You're in the woods. You're gonna fight Taken just like you would with Alan Wake, and you're gonna fight this new people that you're gonna see, and then you'll immediately catch when you get to the first boss, you'll immediately catch something that is part of Alan Wake, right? But then when you get to Alan Wake's part, that's when you really see all of the nuance to the storytelling. Just walking around the world, and that's what's so cool.
That's why I want to play the first one before, because the best example I can put is a buddy of mine had never played Resident Evil 7 and wanted to play 8. So
Yeah.
Village. And he asked me, he's like, do I need to go back and play 7 before I play 8? And I go, you really don't have to. Like, the story in 8 is pretty contained within itself for those that have not played the rest of the series, especially 7. But there are instances in 8 that call back to 7 that make you go, oh my God, this is great, that you will not get if you don't play 7 first.
Right.
But in the end, you're not going to get it. I think that's the same with Alan Wake 2, where it's like the story is going to be contained within itself, but man, there's so many cool little elements that you're just going to miss out on if you're not playing.
Yeah, and then the
both,
way
so.
they do the storytelling in Alan Wake 2, when we get to the Game Awards, I have a sneaky suspicion that Alan Wake 2 is really going to be up there with winning awards because
was it tied for the most nominations with
Baldur's
Gate 3?
Baldur's
Is that what I
Gate,
heard?
Yeah. I mean, and it definitely deserves many of those nominations for sure. Anything else you have been?
I've just been tinkering with Super Mario Wonder. That game is so fun. We're only through the first 2 worlds now. We went, my son and I went back through the first world and 100%ed it and made sure we got all the flagpoles and all the secret stuff. And we're just having an absolute blast. We even played it 4-player for a little bit with the little one, and that was a little bit more of a frustrating experience, but that's what that is supposed to be. We did have fun as a family and got through a few levels and stuff, but I'm still not super far into all the different worlds and stuff, but it seems to be a really fun little family game that we're adding to. And the charm in this game, it's every level when you get the Wonder Seed, you're just going, oh, I wonder what's going to happen in this level, and it goes against your expectations nearly every time. We're having a blast.
Oh yeah, it's like the way that they've done this, where the like getting the stuff from the Wonder effects, and it's unique to every level, like makes you actually want to. Man, I want to find it. I want to see what crazy thing they're gonna do in this, and I understand the people that don't want to, that say, oh, Super Mario Wonder is just another 2D Mario. Like, why is this up for Game of the Year or whatever? It's all about recency, and it has nothing to do with actually how great the game is. And I'm like, I think you kind of I don't know that you get how actually impressive it is unless you have played a lot of the 2D Mario, and especially if, like, for me, Super Mario World is my favorite Mario. So this game feels like, what if they made Super Mario World today, right? And then, like, just the stuff that you can do in this game, the elephant power, all that stuff. I played some of it with Anaya. It's so much fun, other than they really need to take that auto first player thing out of there. But aside from that, just I definitely do think it deserves to be in the Game of the Year conversation. Because it feels fresh, where the new Super Mario Brothers stuff never did. This really feels like something new.
It feels like exactly what Odyssey did to the 3D Mario, where it took the similar and took it in a whole different direction and just really reinvented the wheel, which is what Mario continues to do. So yeah, I totally agree with you. That's why I never really got into the new Super Mario stuff as much. I think I played the first one and then kind of bounced off the rest, and this has just been an absolute blast. It's been great.
Yeah, and I mean, thank you for the wonderful segue of talking from a new Super Mario game, Super Mario Wonder, to it technically is released new, but it's not that new because Super Mario RPG Remake did come out, but it's honestly more like we redid the graphics, we redid some of the gameplay where the attacks have more oomph to them, and if you hit them, they have more of attack power. But honestly, as somebody that hasn't played Super Mario RPG, this is great for me. Like, I love it as the, like, oh, this is my first introduction to this game. I don't get the I've obviously watched what Super Mario RPG looked like back in the day. I've seen it being played. I remember as a younger kid, but I didn't play it myself back then on the Super Nintendo. I don't know if you did.
I didn't
Randy.
play it as a kid, but we played it for the backlog busting project at one point. So I have played the original.
I mean, what did you think about it
Was
back then?
charming. I mean, I wouldn't put it at the elite of those Super Nintendo RPGs because that was a golden age, I think, in role playing games, and I think this was a cute version with Mario getting added to the mix, and it's a short little game, and I had a lot of fun with it. I think it's very charming, but there's a lot of people that want to put it as like one of the best RPGs on the Super Nintendo. I'm like, have you forgotten how good that era was? Like the Super Nintendo killed it, and then the PlayStation went way over the top with it. But yeah, it was a cute game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the nuance, the sort of like, oh, hey, I can play as Peach, I can play as Bowser, and we get to all be on one team, and then you add in the characters that were added, probably by Square Enix and all that to this game. Which you got to remember, the original was made in association with Square. Like what we think about with Disney and Square Enix today, that the first thing was with Nintendo and Square. And it's weird that Square's not really on this at all. It seems more like a Nintendo made thing. But I think what I do appreciate is that they didn't try to make this like a 3D thing. I don't know if maybe it would have popped off for more people that way, but the fact that they kind of kept it in the same sort of way that it was originally and just said, okay, let's make this look prettier, as if it was made today, but still in sort of the top-down 2D look. And then you sort of see I think what also hurts it a little bit is we've already had a game like Sea of Stars come out, which you can clearly see where Sea of Stars got their combat system from, which is this game, right? And it does that so well that like getting to do it with the I guess the quote unquote original much later doesn't feel as special, I guess, when you've already played that game. But just getting to see these characters again and like how weird this game is, like some of the freaking enemies that you fight in this game are like you never see them again in any other Mario games, right? Like that's what's kind of special about this game. It's like a one-off like thing that you don't get to see again, and that makes it special. They also added the triple moves to this version, which was not, so clear inspiration from Chrono Trigger there, which also Sea of Stars has a lot of inspiration from as well. So yeah, I think this is great. This is a great way to cap off the great year that Nintendo has had. Oh, this was the end of the Switch. Well, they had one hell of an end of the Switch here. And then there's more games coming as we lead up to what we believe is going to be the announcement of the Switch 2 or whatever that's going to be called. So I think that like this is a great game to go experience if you haven't done so yet. I'm really excited to get further in. I'm really just kind of like 2 hours in at this point, and I'm already kind of loving the charm of it, and just you can kind of see where a lot of the kind of character moments that you get with Toad and even with Peach and stuff like that and Bowser that come in the later games, they also come from this game too. So you can see where obviously the Mario and Luigi games come inspired from this game as well. It's like that is all great, and it's lovingly recreated here on the Switch, and I really do think that that's awesome that Nintendo has done that here and given people like me a chance to play it and not on an emulator or something like that on my actual Switch and getting to play it in a nicer look. So hats off to them for doing this. And the other sort of big game that released today, Persona 5 Tactica, which is another one of these spin-offs for the Persona games. You know, we had the Musu inspiration one a few years back, and that one actually kind of turned what you can do with those kind of games. They made that into a different game for that genre, even though it still had some of that stuff, Dynasty Warriors stuff in it, but it felt different compared to those games. And this doesn't really, I would say, reinvent the wheel so much. This is, a strategy RPG. And then, of course, when you've already had something that kind of did do little, how could we do sort of like a animated cartoony version of XCOM with the Mario and Rabbids games. So you get the free sort of movement that you get in those games here with Persona 5 Tactica. You still get to do the special attacks with your persona and stuff like that in this game. And then having all the characters, and then they have their own story, which is interesting. I love how they keep expanding this universe. You would argue that, like, how do they keep just adding stuff on to Persona 5 and making it continue to be something? And I think they do that well here. I think this is not going to, I think if you don't like these games per se, it's not going to make you want to play it. And also, there's a lot of stuff, because this is like in the middle of Persona 5 also. So there's quite a bit that you kind of need to know about Persona 5 in order to sort of get, like, it's obviously a spinoff, like, but there's little hints and things like that you won't get if you haven't played the game. But this does have like its own character, Erina, that's brought in for this game, and you're kind of like thrust weirdly into the metaverse or the memory verse, whatever that they call it in Persona, and then you kind of have to go with Joker and Mona and save the rest of the crew and see how we're going to do there. I'm really early on in this as well, because it just came out today on Game Pass. But yeah, it's one of these like cool things that I'm glad that they were able to take the series and make different games with it. And if you enjoy those characters like I do, that's here for you. I don't think it does anything crazy special with strategy RPGs, but it is a really good one of those also. So yeah, this is well worth checking out. I think people should give it a look, especially being on Game Pass. It's going to be interesting, the amount of people that maybe play this like strategy games, haven't played Persona at all, and perhaps they can get into the Persona universe, which, that remake of Persona 3 comes out, next year pretty quickly. So we'll get more Persona soon. But this has been a good one. I don't know how you are with strategy RPGs, Randy, or the Persona.
It's not big in my element. I played a little bit of the XCOM games. I have the Mario and Rabbids game and played a little bit of it. I just never can get into them.
Yeah, understandable. They're not for everybody, and I do appreciate that this one. This tries to make it. I hit the wrong button there.
You're like, oh, you don't like strategy games? You're off the show.
Right. So yeah, the it's good that they try to make it like friendlier, and they give you a tutorial pretty quickly there, and it's not a hard concept to grasp. It's more about, like, obviously when you get more enemies on the field and things like that, trying to figure out how to kill them without getting yourself killed. And they do have different difficulty options, so if you want to just breeze through this game to play the story, you can definitely do that, or you can make it harder for yourself, which is nice when they can do that. So yeah, I mean, those are the two big games I've been playing. I played a little bit more of Alan Wake, like I said, Alan Wake 2, and then I played a little bit more of Thirsty Suitors. Thirsty Suitors, still enjoying it. It's a game that it's weird, because I had somebody when I was talking about the first time, like a few weeks ago, I had somebody comment that it was their most embarrassing game they played all year. It was the worst game they played all year, because they were embarrassed anytime somebody came in the room and saw them playing it. And I said, well, I mean, I understand it probably might have been something you looked at because it was on Game Pass, but it's like, if you looked up this game at all, you kind of should know what it's about. And I wouldn't say that it's something that, um, it's appreciate you, checking it out, at least checking out the show, even though you couldn't watch the whole way through. We do appreciate you guys doing that. But yeah, it's a game that, like, look, it's about a girl and her ex-boyfriends, and it's kind of done in a more what if it was happening in 2023, not like Scott Pilgrim, that's obviously of its time back when, we were younger. This is sort of like, what if Gen Z is having issues, right? And it goes into she's bisexual, and you deal with things like that. And I had and I was in the room when I was playing it yesterday, and she's kind of like, what is this about? There's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm trying to explain it to her, and I think she kind of got it, but I can understand, like, I don't know that I'd feel weird if my girlfriend came in the room, or my mom came in the room, or something like that. Probably like, what is this you're watching? You're fighting one of these characters that the aunt sends, because this is an Indian. She's Indian, so there's a belief in arranged marriage that still happens quite a bit in India. So the grandma is still in India. She's coming for the sister's wedding or whatever that's happening in like a month from the story. And she's sending you the enemies that you fight, like when you're going around the world skateboarding, are the suitors that she thinks you should be, marrying or whatever. And you're fighting them and like flirting with them and saying weird things to them while you're fighting. And there's different taunts and things that you do. And she says weird things, that he says weird things. And it's like, I can kind of get that, but I don't think that means it's the worst game of the year because of that. It's just, you kind of got to understand what you're playing and know that maybe that's not something I want to play around everyone. Not every game is like that.
Right.
Back when we were, when I was, the times that I would play Grand Theft Auto when I was younger, or trying to hide it from my dad or whatever, when like you're not going to play that around everybody because of the subject matter. Right. It's, I think people are, just totally sometimes just go off the rails about, because I don't like what they're talking about in this game, so it automatically is bad. And it's like,
or it's not of my taste, so it's a bad game. Just to go
exactly.
On the other
instead of saying, "Hey, this game's not for me," oh, it's a bad game. It's a bad game. It's like, no, that's not. This is what's so awesome about gaming in this decade plus that we're in. There is literally a game for everybody. And you can go find that game, and then when you get done with that game, there's more games for you.
I've been on the show a handful of times this year, and every single time I go, there are too many games, we can't keep up. But you know what? Not all of them are for us, which is great.
Exactly.
But you're gonna find something that you're gonna be really into, and you're gonna have a plethora of options every single year that are gonna come out that hit your tastes. And if you play, especially with things like Game Pass now out there, you can test something out. If you don't like it, you move on, and it's not a big deal. And at the end of the day, you just go, it wasn't for me.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that Indie World thing that they had, Nintendo had, this week, and they continue to put out so many life sims, so many of these farming sims, and they're not really for me. They're not games that I gravitate towards, because eventually, like, for me, it just kind of gets tedious. Like, it's like, all right, I'm going to the same farm again and doing the same thing over and over. Like, it's like that's why for me, like, Harvestella was different, because it took the RPG, like Square Enix Final Fantasy stuff, added that in there, and then there's some life sim stuff in there. And then they show stuff, and then like even like Moonstone Island, which I keep seeing on my Twitter feed, and I keep seeing all the different things you can do, and then they show the trailer for it because it's coming to Switch. After being on PC for most of the year. And I'm like, I'm kind of interested. But then I sit there and go, it's also a life sim. Do I want to deal with that? Like, so I have to sometimes go, this is intriguing, but also just may not be for me. And I don't know if, I want to invest in that And I think people should be more aware of things like that, of just saying, you know what, maybe this is not for me. Let me go wait for the next game that is for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I think that's it for us playing games here. Let's go ahead and get into, I guess, what a lot of people probably care the most about here, which is, Game Awards. That's coming up pretty soon.
Yes.
And they just released the nominees. And of course, there was plenty of conversation about, should this be Game of the Year? Should it be up into, be there for the awards? This shouldn't be Game of the Year. What are you people doing? Just to, I guess, let's start at the top, because why not? Game of the Year awards. We have the aforementioned Super Mario Brothers Wonder, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate 3, Alan Wake 2, Marvel Spider-Man 2, and Resident Evil 4 Remake. Those are your 6 games. This has been a year where we've had so many games come out. The two prevalent things that I kept seeing are, or 3, I'm sorry. Super Mario Brothers Wonder shouldn't be here. It's just another 2D Mario. Marvel Spider-Man 2 shouldn't be here. It's another Spider-Man game. There's nothing special about it. And of course, the big one, Resident Evil 4 Remake should not be here because it's a remake, and there's too many great games this year, and they should have honored something else, because that was actually a new 2023 game. What do you feel about the announcements for Game of the Year?
What else would you want on here? To those people that are complaining about all of the other games that I think would even hint at possibly making this list are sequels or reimaginings, or in the case of something like Starfield, it's just the exact same game but in a different scenario. Like, that's what all of these games are.
I mean, they wouldn't say that. Probably they would say that Starfield is not the same game.
Super Mario Wonder is not the same game as New Super Mario Brothers. It's the same take, but in a different situation, in a different world, actually, if you want to go in that route.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the Flower Kingdom. It's not the...
So Starfield is Fallout in a different atmosphere, or Elder Scrolls in a different atmosphere. That's what Starfield is, and that's fine. It's for those people that like that kind of game. I do understand the argument for Resident Evil 4 Remake. However, I will argue, like the other remakes, it is a complete reimagining of that tale. They change a ton about that game. It's not just step for step. You're doing the exact same things. Obviously, you hit the same high points, and the main story is the same, but they do a really good job of telling it in a different way, and the combat is just absolutely phenomenal in that game. And for the rest, like Spider-Man 2 is just more Spider-Man. Of course. Guess what? Alan Wake 2 is more Alan Wake. Nobody's complaining about that. Baldur's Gate 3 is more Baldur's Gate.
No.
Tears of the Kingdom is just another Zelda game. It's Breath of the Wild 2.0. Like, that's what all of these games are.
I will agree with you that Tears of the Kingdom is sort of more, but also you got the things that add to it that completely change the game. You can't...
But I'm not saying it shouldn't be here. I'm just saying every single one of these games is a sequel.
Yes.
And for most of the games that people would like on this list instead is either a sequel in name or a sequel in premise.
Right. I don't think that there's... I mean, unless you're going to throw something like Cocoon out there.
I absolutely love Cocoon. It's one of my favorite games I've played this year. It is not Game of the Year worthy, and I think it'll win other awards, but no, to me, these 6, and I have not played them all. I will not play Baldur's Gate 3. This is not my kind of game. Everything I hear is just, it's such an expansive game and ridiculous, which is awesome. It's just not for me. I think it deserves. I've just heard every wonderful things about Alan Wake 2. I'm trying to get into that world now, playing the original. Breath of the Wild was absolutely not for me. I was bored to tears with it. I will by far not say it was a bad game by any means. It was just not I like the 2D Zeldas more than the 3D Zeldas. But my son really loved Breath of the Wild. He really is liking Tears of the Kingdom as he plays through that. And for the other 3 games on there that I have played, I've loved all of them. So I have zero issues with these 6. And yes, there are plenty of other games that could have possibly been put in here, but in the end of the day, guess what, guys? Baldur's Gate 3 is probably winning this thing, and it's not even going to be close, so it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, some would say that being nominated is important, right?
And they'll be nominated in other places.
Right. No, I agree with you, but I think the idea is that you want to be nominated because it gives you people will know about it, even beyond, let's say, our sphere of we're in this. And again, if you want to compare it to the Oscars and the Grammys, right? You want to get to that nomenclature where you say you are the Game Awards, you're nominated for that.
But while we try to, I'll just push back on that real quick. Because while we try to push that because we want the Game Awards to be this big, awesome thing like the Oscars, everyone watches the Oscars, which is not the case anymore. But
no, they're not.
we pretend that everyone watches the Oscars. But guess what? Only gamers watch the Game Awards. People that are not into gaming are not watching the 5-hour show that Jeff Keighley puts on. So guess what? Like, if you're mad that, I don't know, throw another game out there that's not, we'll put Starfield on there. Starfield is not on the Game of the Year. It needs to be on there so people recognize it. Every single human being that is watching the Game Awards this year knows what Starfield is. So, yeah. And the rest of these awards do a great job of throwing out those smaller titles like Cocoon in their respective avenues. There's never going to be a game ever that gets nominated for Game of the Year that one of us gamers goes, I've never even heard of that game. That's not what this is. That's the Oscars comes out with movies that are not popular. They're based off of the way the critics look at the movies. So there are movies that will come out there. You go, I've never even heard of that movie. Now I need to go watch it. That's not what the Game Award is.
I mean, I would push back on that.
Games.
I would push back on that because you did have Celeste one year. You had,
which was really popular,
but it was still an indie game that a lot of people wouldn't touch or they didn't know about, or
and go back to that year. That year was weak.
Yeah,
in video games. If Celeste,
look at the year Hades
came out
won.
This year, it wouldn't come out.
Yeah, no, I agree. Celeste probably wouldn't have stood up to those. But I mean, look at the year Hades won, right? A lot of people wound up playing, I think, Hades after because it won, right? And also it wound up on Game Pass and all that stuff too eventually, and that helped. But
that helps.
I do think that there is a case to be made for. I think we need to be more open about the voting process, and perhaps there needs to be some kind of panel made at some point that makes some of these decisions, so that we're not just. I have more of a problem, not necessarily with like the Game of the Year, that what's there. It's more about like how we decide what goes into what genre. What are we doing with, like, why are these games getting stuck in there? Are we putting a game into the RPG category because it got a lot of votes and it needs to be somewhere, but we don't have anywhere to put it?
That's the entire RPG category right now. I'm 100% with you. The categories themselves need to be defined more, and they almost need to come out with a list of possible nominees.
That's something also. Yeah, I wonder how that is because we're not part of that. But like every time I've heard, whether it's Kind of Funny or MinMax or somebody say that they voted, they kind of just say that they make a list.
Yeah,
and that's sort of it. It's not, okay, here are the games that probably should be in this category. Here are they, and here it's like a write-in. And so who is it that decides this goes into what this genre, like this genre, like
Yeah.
I get it that there's some genres like action adventure and action that's kind of like, where do we draw the line on what is what, right?
Yeah.
But and I get that like everything's an RPG now, so like where do we draw the line on what is an RPG and what is not, and how do we, when you're looking at things that are the six that you're going to put in or whatever, where do you draw that line? Do we need to expand that? Like, I feel like we need to have action RPG and turn-based RPG, or maybe not JRPG, because that's a stigma related name. You know, it's not. We don't need to have Western and Japanese RPG like that.
No, I agree.
We call them that, but we don't need to have those in official nomenclature like that. I think that's going to offend people. We don't need that.
I just think
but,
action RPG
yeah.
and RPG can be two completely different sets.
Exactly.
There's enough action RPGs now that they easily can have their own.
And there's so many action games that are action RPGs because they put the RPG elements in them, and it's like, you can call this an action RPG, you know? Like
we have a skill tree. We're a role playing game.
Yeah, I mean, technically, that's what Final. You could argue that Final Fantasy 16 is more an action game than an RPG.
Yeah. Oh,
like
100%.
it's like
100%.
You know, so you could technically take Final Fantasy 16 out of the RPG one and put it in action, and it would be just fine.
Absolutely.
But you know, I think we probably need to look at some things, like, you know, and it's weird to me because I feel like we're going about this the wrong way, in that I keep seeing people put up that Hogwarts Legacy sold the most out of any game this year, and how the hell is it not nominated for anything? And I get it that the whole thing with J.K. Rowling is probably a big reason why nobody decided to even touch it, or it just didn't get enough votes from the people that did play it compared to the ones that did not, and it just didn't get nominated for stuff. I also want to know, like,
that's what I forgot came out this year. Haley loves that game. She's very close to getting her first solo platinum with it. That's the one game that she likes to play. I forgot that was this year. That's how many games have come out this year. But I am kind of shocked that got nothing, though I know, like you said, the issues behind the scenes are in there. But yeah, that is one I totally forgot about. So there you go.
I do think that perhaps we should, I don't know, because, like, you know, we already have the problem with, like, Jeff Keighley said he's not going to talk about layoffs, and he's not going to talk about some of the other things that have been happening in the industry at the Game Awards, which I think is completely wrong. Like, just like what we've seen with the Oscars and the Grammys, like, when you are on the biggest stage, this is where you need to make the biggest statements and not hide behind the fact that this is also why sometimes I feel like arguing about the awards is stupid, because this show exists less about the awards, and they do it every year. It is way more about the announcements that happen at this show than it is about the awards and the ads that Jeff Keighley has to put on this show to sell it. So,
I mean, for those that are worried about these awards, guess what? Half of them are going to be announced in two different segments. Like, they're just going to run down.
Half
about
of them are going to be done on the pre-show.
Awards. Yeah.
It's like, you know, to me, that's where I have an issue, is like, he worries about, oh man, the people that come out here for the announcements are going to get upset because we're talking about industry stuff and nobody wants to hear about that, or they don't want any derogatory things being said on there or whatever that might hurt the sponsors might get hurt by them, because they are the big companies that perhaps pay for this. And it's like, you know, that's where I sometimes have an issue with what Jeff is doing, because I get it that you need the ads to sell this event and everything else, but you do remember that this is within the industry, and you know, we should care about that stuff. But you know, going back to the genre stuff for a second, just to, I guess, show what we're talking about for the people that maybe haven't seen all the nominees or whatever. So let's look at this from the perspective of, this is the I'm looking at the wrong thing here. The best RPG category that we're talking about. You got Baldur's Gate 3, obvious, right? Final Fantasy
Yeah.
16, Lies of P, Sea of Stars, and Starfield. Lies of P should probably be in the action game category. And a little game called Octopath Traveler 2 got totally snubbed here. It is one of the best RPGs of this year. And somehow Lies of P is in here. And you have something like Ghost Runner 2 in Best Action Game, also Dead Island 2. And then you have stuff that does deserve to be mentioned. Remnant 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Armored Core 6. Those are 3 standouts of this year. And it's just weird to me. Like, it's like, where are we? I get it that, again, like, how do we do these nominations? This is why a list should perhaps be provided, because you have people going, I wonder how many people go, oh, this game came out this year, let me put it on there. And it's like, really? That's what we're doing? We're supposed to be really looking at this and saying, are these the games that really should be on here? Are these the standards for this year? Instead of just kind of like letting games pop into people's heads, and instead of just saying, okay, these are the games, here's a write-in section if you want to put in this game, right? If you think this game should be in this genre, here's a write-in. And you could put the write-in. And if you get enough people writing in for that game, then sure, put it on here. Right?
Yeah, so we made a mistake and we didn't categorize it well enough or whatever. But yeah, I agree. Again, obviously we don't get to vote on these, but I'm with you, hearing the different people talk about how they came up with their nominations. It just there was a lot of them that went, oh, I totally forgot that game came out, and or I didn't really think that game belonged in that category, so I didn't vote for it. So I think there are other games out there, maybe a Hogwarts Legacy, that has a lot of different elements to it that they weren't sure exactly what category it belonged in. So then it may have gotten voted in several different categories and didn't get enough votes to get nominated. That's interesting. Again, I think RPG is the one that really stands out to me, is the one that just makes no sense as to why things are there. I'm with you that Final Fantasy 16 is more action than it is RPG. We only put it in the RPG category because it has the title Final Fantasy on it. Lies of P, to me, doesn't make any sense to be here, as far as, I mean, it's another Souls-like game, and it very much stands on its own. And I don't think Souls-like games are role-playing games to me. I totally get you and Octopath Traveler. I'm confused why a game like Diablo 4 isn't then considered an RPG, because it has RPG elements, but it's not good enough to be on here. Not to say that it fits the mold as well, but again, that's the one where I really feel that they just need to split apart. Like, again, most likely in the end, when they announce the awards, it's just going to be one of those run through titles. And
exactly.
So for Jeff, what does it hurt to have 20 more seconds spent on announcing action RPG and turn-based RPG or whatever you want to do, and split it into a couple categories? But I will now also say that throwing it all into one pile like this creates conversation. So congratulations, Jeff. We do talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, we are talking about it because of that. I do think we'll eventually get more awards, especially if he's just going to take 10 seconds to announce them like that. Then what does it matter if he puts them in here? And hey, like, if you're not making, if it's not making the thing another hour long, then what does it matter, right?
Yeah.
And I think it would help to provide clarity, because a lot of these games, again, like I mentioned, like, the reason of being nominated is because you get to be mentioned when you say game awards, right? You can use that as part of billing for your promoting your game. You get to be part of the Game Awards sales that show up. Like, it does matter. Like I said, whether you at the end of the day, what's going to happen is like what happens with all of these things. What happens with all of any kind of competitive thing, you're going to only remember the winner at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
it still matters, right? And this is why I do think it's cool that games like Alan Wake 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, which do feel like they take gaming forward as far as like what you can do with gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And Legend of Zelda to an extent, even though I think if Breath of the Wild hadn't been so great, maybe we would be more wowed by Tears of the Kingdom. I think the problem is that you already got Breath of the Wild. So like the cool stuff that Tears of the Kingdom does that does move gaming forward isn't as cool the second time around. Right. Whereas Alan Wake 2 makes you feel like, wow, gaming can be cinematic in a different way that feels like, oh, this is a movie game. This is a game that somebody actually had their finger and you can feel the finger moving every time you do something in that game. Baldur's Gate 3 is so free in all the things that you can do in this game in a different way, right? So like those two games just feel so special. Not that the other games don't, but those two games feel so special in this year that like game direction, if Alan Wake 2 doesn't win, I don't know, what's going on there between that and Baldur's Gate 3. Like Marvel Spider-Man 2 has like cool moments, you would say.
Yeah.
Right. But and like Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Wonder, that's cool, but a lot of that's made by the player. An interesting one for me is best narrative. Right, like if we ask Mark, he will tell me that Final Fantasy 16 has the stupidest narrative he's ever heard in a game, or had to been through, and it does have its problems. Let's be fair. A lot of the narrative is told in the side quest, which it is
in a very
bad.
slow manner.
Yes. I think we said it in the. You can tell that the guy that makes Final Fantasy 14 made Final Fantasy 16 because he puts requirements on. Needed to go through, and it's like that's a weird way to tell a story when you're not playing an MMO.
It'd be really I'm with you as far as best narrative, because like you said, I've yet to play Alan Wake 2, but it does, from what I've seen, more represents those movie style games, which is a good way of putting that. I'm curious if that's going to win over Baldur's Gate 3, because Baldur's Gate 3, it's a game I will not play. Most likely. I mean, if it ends up like on a Game Pass or something, it may be one I test out and try. But what I am so impressed with Baldur's Gate 3 from the friends of mine that have played it and rave about it, it reminds me of that Stanley Parable game that came out years ago, but just expanded to a ridiculous amount. Where the amount of times they've went, I tried to make make a choice that I thought would break the game, and the game just rolled with it. And that was the entire game of Stanley Parable. It's like the narrator was always doing stuff. It's like, well, if I could get out of bounds, and how could I break the game? And also the narrator comments on what you're doing and goes, no, we thought about that. And
that's so cool, right?
It's like Baldur's Gate 3 in a nutshell, just expanded to this entire universe.
The amount of lines and dialogue that are in that game for every choice that you make is insane.
I'm going to do this crazy thing. And they're like, nope. Well, now you've completely changed the rest of this game in a whole different way. It's so, again, it's not my kind of game, so I'm jealous in a way.
Yeah.
But what a cool aspect.
It's easily one of those games you could put like 100 hours and still not experience like half the stuff you can do in that game. Yeah.
You could play 100 hours and I could play 100 hours, and then we could get together and come up with 3 hours of a podcast of things that I saw that you didn't see.
Exactly. That's what's so cool about games like that. And if you have the time to put in for those games, and I sometimes I'm jealous of the people that you buy that game and that's the game you play and you can't experience things like that. Interesting, the comeback story that Cyberpunk 2077 has finally achieved with Phantom Liberty and then the 2.0 update that have finally put Cyberpunk 2077 back into the this is a good game category, great game category.
I can't believe they put it in the ongoing category.
Yeah, I kind of get it. Like between the 1.5, 2.0 update and then the DLC, it does feel like it's ongoing because they made a bunch of huge updates that matter to the game. But yes, when when there's other ongoing games that are actually ongoing, it's like kind of weird, you know.
It's only ongoing because they broke it so bad at the beginning.
Right, exactly.
It's ongoing because it came out 2 years before it was supposed to.
Yeah, best music is also going to be an interesting one to me because Hi-Fi Rush has a great licensed and unlicensed soundtrack. Of course, Zelda always has great music. Baldur's Gate 3, Alan Wake 2 has great ambiance, and the soundtrack that plays at the end of each level, the music is great. And then, of course, Final Fantasy 16, which we both love the crap out of.
I just spent the money to finally get the Final Fantasy 16 music on that Theorhythm.
Yeah.
Oh God, reliving through some of these songs. They're so good.
Yes, I played those too. They're so great. I love it. And I love the fact that they did not cut them. They are the full freaking song.
On a couple of them, the flame song seems a lot shorter than when I just play it, but they get the main section of it for sure.
And I love that song. The one when you fight I guess it's a Garuda. The like waltzy song, like that's so good, and they have like the full thing of that. I'm just like, man, this feels long, but I want to keep playing, and I don't care. Like the song's so good.
Good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That's gonna be a fun one of how they do this, and I definitely think with, like I said, all these technical ones like audio design. Alan Wake 2 could probably sweep in all these. Baldur's Gate 3 apparently swept the golden joysticks when it for all that stuff. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens. Best Performance also has a lot of great stuff in here.
Star power. There's a lot of star power there.
Because Melanie Labourde, who does Saga, does a great job. Neil Newbon does a great job. Baldur's Gate 3, of course, Yuri Lowenthal and Spider-Man. Idris Elba was a great actor, obviously. So
but then, to me, I think Ben Starr wins this not because of his performance, though I thought his performance was really good, just for what he's done in social media since then.
Yeah,
I think that he has this wrapped up just because for his speech that he
there's probably a lot of people that didn't play much of Final Fantasy 16, but because they keep seeing him on social media, like you said, they're gonna remember him and they're gonna go, "Oh, okay, Ben Starr." You know, like
I don't even think he had the best performance in that game. The guy that played Sid, I apologize.
Ralph
I don't know your
Ineson
name.
did a much better job. Yeah,
he was the voice of that game, even though he wasn't there as much as Ben Starr was as being the main character. But Sid was ridiculous in it. Ben Starr was very, very good. But again, it's the stuff he does in social media that you have sent to me a couple times where he's doing his tryouts and stuff for characters. Ben Starr has made himself a star, if you will. Like, he's going to be up there with the Troy Bakers and Nolan Norris. We're like, oh my God, he's in this game now too.
Yeah. No, but it's like what makes it even funnier is that he is Clive doing all of these tryouts, which is like, oh, I love, this is how much he loves that character, how much that voice has made him something, because that's how he got the job. He was supposed to be some kind of like side character. And then they told him, oh, hey, how about you try to read the lines to the main character? And they're like, wait a minute. Yeah, it's a Hellblade situation. Like, oh, he needs to be Clive. Like, so this is, it's an awesome story. So like that also might be a reason why he wins as well, so another one that kind of stirred up a lot of controversy is the indie game category, because they call it best independent game, right? And so Dave the Diver is apparently made by a studio that was formed inside Nexon, which is a big company, right? So it'd be like if PlayStation or Xbox took a studio they made, like let's say Haven made an indie game and they called it, this is an independent game. It's not, right? Sony owns the studio. And it brought up a lot of issues for people, right? Like, you're removing actual independent games and putting Dave the Diver on here. I think this is another one that we need to expand the category, right? We need to figure out a way where it's not super subjective, where we're not talking about, okay, well, only the pixel art games should be going on here. Like not stuff like that, but make it to where truly an independent game, and then you can say something like the best non AAA game or something like that.
Yeah, and again, honestly, this has to come down to Jeff and his team giving out nominee lists where things have their place. Because honestly, I mean, I'm not in this industry much. I just hop on here and have fun. I obviously listen to podcasts and stuff. I guarantee you, most of the people that are even in the business and had the list to do the nominations forgot and or did not know that Dave the Diver was owned by a parent company that makes them not independent. And that's the reason why it's only listed here, because Dave the Diver was such a big thing for a couple of months.
And you know what?
It was that Twitch game for a while that all the streamers were playing. So it just pops into your mind, and obviously the graphics, may lend to the point of, okay, this has to be an indie game, just the way it's built and the goofy things they do. So there's going to be a lot of people that probably still to this day go, well, of course it's an indie game. Look at it, instead of knowing the backstory of it. And then, of course, people will freak out. But again, that's why a nominee possible list has to come out for all these categories.
Yeah, somebody has to be behind there actually caring about making sure that all these categories are legit, and that the nominees that are being provided should legitimize that as well, right? Does Jeff necessarily care about that part of it that much? That's the part that I wonder if he kind of sees it as, oh, this is just, Twitter being Twitter and doesn't really matter. And
in the end, does it matter? No. Everything will be fine.
No.
But I do agree it does kind of take a spot from an actual,
and also because Dave the Diver could legitimately win, right? Like Dave the Diver could legitimately win over
100%.
Cocoon, Dredge, Sea of Stars, and Viewfinder, because it was that it game.
Yeah, it was the game for sure.
Go ahead. Sorry,
I was gonna say. I mean, I haven't played it, but if we were picking our winners, I would say Cocoon. Sea of Stars a very close second, just because I haven't finished that game yet, but I love both of those. I haven't played the other three yet. But if we were doing predictions on what we think we're actually going to win, I'd say Dave the Diver, because of its popularity and where it went. And it's semantics at the end of whether it deserves it or not. But to answer your question, whether Jeff cares, I'm sure in a way he cares, but with all of the different things that he does, how big he's made Summer Game Fest now, where it's kind of taken over the E3 timeline and all of the other projects, this just felt to him where it's like, it's easy enough, and it keeps the opinions enough of all these different game journalism places to just give them a blank canvas, and then they curate the nominees. But with indie, it goes along with all the other subcategories, where games now are not what they used to be, where they were a finite subject. Like, you go back to the NES games, there's not a lot of games that blended more than two genres together. Like, it was a cool game where you had two genres to come together. Now, so many games are a blend of 4 or 5 different genres, and it just depends where you want to place it. So he almost needs a small team to, as the year goes on, you just, okay, this came out, we even just read a review on it or whatever, we are placing it in this category. Dave the Diver looks like an indie game, but you look at the business side, it's not, so it can't go in this category, so we'll put it over here and have it nominated there. So it's one of those things. I think Jeff is trying to be more expansive with the views of other people, but it allows the confusion, I think, for the Twitter wars, which still is, guys, we were such a small subset of a small subset. It's fine.
You forget sometimes how very small that is. And then when something comes out, and look at Harry Potter, for example. the highest selling game of the year, and all there was when this game came
Yeah.
out was the controversy surrounding, which is legitimate. It's super legitimate, and it's right, and they have every right to be upset about it. You know, of what the author said, and yes, she is tied into this game, even though she's not really making. You know, she's getting royalties off this game, even though she has nothing to do with the actual development of the game. And I understand that. Again, it's just, you know, we sometimes, again, people forget how small this subset is. And I think you bring up the point. I think Jeff's goal has always been Game Awards was the launch pad to have Summer Game Fest, eventually become the main thing not necessarily destroy E3. I don't know that he necessarily wanted to do that particularly. He just wanted it to be its own thing and become the way that you do the Summer Game Fest thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then he gets to do that again with the opening night live thing, having like his, I think the Summer Game Fest thing has become more of his baby now than the Game Awards is now. The Game Awards is this cool, like, end of the year. Let's sort of end the year, but also start the year again, have really awesome announcements. Let's award some stuff. I'm going to have my big actor, have actors here, have actresses here, have this here. But it's not necessarily about the awards outside of like the main big ones. Right. And so he does eventually have a panel that does this stuff, but it may not be for a few years. This outcry that we have this year has to be consistent in order for him to, I think, finally decide, okay, maybe.
Even then, the outcry, unless it is from like the top media people, where they go, unless this is changed, we are not going to be a part of your thing. Like if IGN
or
and all those
complain,
guys,
right?
Yeah.
Developers make it a big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Say developers go, we will not give you our exclusive trailers and stuff if you don't fix it. Then it's not going to be from small people like us or the people on Twitter. Like that's not where the outcry.
And
needs
I think also we got to remember that they get way more money from getting to show their game at this thing than what if they win an award or get nominated or whatever. So there's a business side to this that will make it to where I wonder if the awards will ever be that big a deal on this. But anyway, let's go back to the actual
go for it.
Award stuff really quick. Just want to give a shout out to the best debut indie game because there's some cool stuff on here aside from Cocoon and Dredge. Venba, which is also up for Games for Impact, which that also needs to be redefined as well, because when it first came out, it was a cool award that you kind of gave out to like games that had like a message or whatever. And I think it still is that, but perhaps we need to like define what that is and not just stick indie games in there because we need to stick indie games in there. Also cool that Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis is up for best mobile game. But I think Honkai Star Rail is going to win that like hands down. Most likely. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that like we need to really mess with the genre. Like also like best family game. Are we just like throwing whatever in here? Like, is this what this is? And then also like the best sim strategy game. Really, I feel like sometimes really needs people to go in and actually let's. That's something else. I also maybe we need to consider when we're talking about eventually with this, if they really want this to matter, is perhaps you have people from both like the YouTuber side and also like game, because they did add like YouTube outlets, like Skill Up was also part of the voting team or whatever this year. Like maybe you do have people that are strategy game is their genre, right? And you say, okay, what do you feel like are the best strategy games? And so you don't have stuff like Pikmin 4 getting put in here or City Skylines 2, which only came out on PC because it was so broken on the other, like there's been other strategy games that were much better than these this year, and
Well,
it feels like we're just throwing this stuff in here.
They do that
Yeah.
with the innovation one, right? The accessibility category, isn't that just based off of one
Well, but
specific
yes,
group of people
exactly.
that
You're
come
right.
out with that?
Mm-hmm. Because that's so specific. But I feel like we could get specific with
some
a
of
lot of
these
these categories. Yeah.
Yeah, fighting game category is the same thing. At least we have enough this year that were popular that was easier for them to come out with the nominees.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times where, like, watching Maximilian dude, who's big into the fighting game scene, see the nominees and go, what?
Yeah, or the sports racing game, like the Crew Motorfest was not that good. We're putting it in here, and
to
we
be
really
fair,
need
there
to
were
have,
not a lot of good sports games this year. I'm always sad when MLB The Show doesn't get the recognition it deserves, but it has fallen into that card-based system too. So I totally get it.
I'm glad that Madden is on here and stuff like that, but it's just like F1's always on here. EA Sports is always on here, and it's not necessarily the best. Like
F1 is always on here, and those that really play F1 can tell you every year it gets worse.
Yeah, like that's the thing,
But the one I want to bring up real quick at the end is best adaptation.
Yes.
You want to talk about Snubs? And I'm not saying it was a good movie. I found it a bit slow, but I think as far as adaptation, it nailed it pretty darn well. I need to go back and rewatch it because I was tired when I watched it. My son absolutely loved it. Maybe it came out a little late, but just talk about financial success. Five Nights at Freddy's not being on this list is shocking to me.
Yeah, because it's weird because it came out the same day as Alan Wake 2, and that's on here.
Yeah. So, Five Nights at Freddy's blew up the box offices while also going straight to Peacock. And also it is the most watched movie ever on Peacock already. And it was one of the best, films in this genre ever in the theaters. So again, am I sitting here saying it was a great movie? No. I thought it was a great adaptation. I thought some of the things they did in it were really clever and really focused on the fan base of that game, which I thought was great. I just am shocked. I'm not saying this category is now ruined because it's not on here, because to me, Last of Us should win this hands down. Mario movie obviously was very, very good as well. But I'm just, to me, shocked that it was not on this list.
I mean, yeah, in a year where we don't have Five Nights at Freddy's, I think this is a very good, 5 that you have in here. I think also we have to remember that there's a large amount of the media that are not, our kids' ages.
Yeah.
That is a big, they're the big, like my daughter was just like your son. Oh my God, I need to see the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I want to see it. Whatever.
But again, if it didn't have the success it had, I wouldn't make this argument. Because again, I don't think the movie was.
Yeah, that's also something that's the thing is you could argue that all of these things are great on their own, not just success, right? And that's what it is supposed to be, best adaptation as far as the content of it, not the this got a lot of hoopla, so that's where I would say. And also I think we need to look at the voters and be like, how many of them actually watched it?
Yeah, no, and
would have voted for it.
In the end, it's Last of Us, and Last of Us will take it all. And I would say it would have been the perfect time.
I wonder if Mario movie might take it just because
I'd be so mad. I would. I don't usually get upset about awards. Mario movie was fine. It was cute. Last of Us, yeah, it was so good.
Yeah, as far as showing you what you can do with a video game TV show.
Yeah,
just like the game, The Last of Us is at the top as far as
And it just makes me more sad that we had all these strikes and stuff. Which again, I don't go against the actors or the writers for striking and getting what they deserved, and totally understand. I wish the industry was better where they didn't have to do that. But I'm sad that we had to go through months of that, because this would have been a perfect time to tease season 2. And now because of all this stuff, they won't even start filming until the spring. So we won't really get much as far as teasing goes. obviously they've been talking about the new actress that'll play Abby, and I'm super excited. So maybe we'll get a tease that way if they win and get on the stage. But honestly, this is the best year for this category.
Yes, it is.
Again, I'm not
I think
upset
this
that
is the
Five
first
Nights
year
at
they've had
Freddy's
this
is not on
category,
here.
though.
But this is the first time I think that I would be upset that one got snubbed. I'll have to go back and look to see if this was a thing, but I want to say it was.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the first year that we've had such like a different amalgamation of things, right? We have the animated with Castlevania Nocturne, and then you have the animated movie with Mario Brothers. You have two different kinds of TV shows with Twisted Metal and Last of Us, and then you have like the Gran Turismo, which you would consider more the traditional video game movie, which actually turned out to be actually really good. So I thought this was going to be crappy, and then all of a sudden it kept getting critics, actually liking it. So interesting. Yeah,
This adaptation started last year.
Oh, it did? Okay.
I'm gonna see who won. I forgot.
What was on last year?
Arcane won it.
Okay, Arcane, yes. Totally deserved. That's a great speaking of before
I'm gonna go back and find the other nominees real quick, but
so since we're gonna go into a Nintendo based thing and we're on best adaptation, what do you think of the announcement of a live action Legend of Zelda movie?
We'll see. I am shocked that they didn't go animated, but I think with Zelda, you can do live action. I've gotten to the point now that any movie or any TV show or movie announcement of video games always scared me, but we are finally improving.
Right, yeah.
Now it was just okay instead of, oh my God, it's goddamn horrible and it's just going to be the worst thing ever. And they're not going to understand the vision of the actual games like they used to be. If they're bad, they're just bad. Like the Halo show was bad, but it wasn't because they did not understand. It was just not a good show. But real quick, the best adaptation last year, Arcane won it. The other ones that were nominated was Cyberpunk Edge Runners, the Cuphead show,
definitely deserved as well.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2 came out last year,
okay,
and then of course the Uncharted movie that came out last year.
Okay, yeah, those are all fine. I mean,
those were all fine. The Uncharted movie was not great, but it was not horrendous. It was not like Mario movie bad or P.W.S. Anderson doing 900 Resident Evil movies in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
So at least we just got to the point where Uncharted was just a buddy cop movie kind of a feel.
Yeah, exactly. And then you could get two big high profile actors to do that movie. Yeah. Right. And then I love that. I love the fact that Sonic movies, Mario movie, and then Last of Us show, Twisted Metal show, like all could exist and show that you can do good things with video game properties. So because that's going to be the new big thing now. But I mean, superhero movies, Marvel and Disney are going to have to figure it out because they don't own any. They own Kingdom Hearts, sort of, and then everything else you don't really own. So like now you can't be the next thing that's going to populate a bunch of movies from now on.
I mean, obviously it's a video game thing, but can we just talk about how Disney has ruined Marvel? By even if I was super into Marvel, how do you keep up with this shit? There's 37 shows going on the TV right shows.
Now. Yeah.
It's like go on Disney and there's 7 new shows every 2 weeks on different Marvel characters, and every Marvel movie has stuff, and it's too much. And Star Wars is kind of the same way, where they have too many different shows.
But at least there's a big gap between when you have the Star Wars movies, right? Like now you're not going to have a Star Wars movie for a while. So that makes sense.
Like the movies would come out, and then you have the TV shows in between. And I don't think they ever overlapped. It would go like Mandalorian and then whatever. And then it was just always a different Star Wars show is going on. But for Marvel, there's like 3 different shows all going on at the same time while 4 different movies come out. It's
now we're going to have a huge I think we're gonna have a big gap. I think next year, because of all the delays and the strikes or whatever, we're not gonna actually have a Marvel movie at all. So it might actually be good because it gives people time to not think about Marvel stuff.
Right.
Because my God, look at even though apparently that movie is not that bad, how bad the Marvel's movie is doing, it's not great. But it might be the kick in the butt that they need to figure this out and go, okay, when do we need to make a TV show? When do we need to make a movie? And well, I'm sorry, I think the Deadpool 3 movie is still going to come out that has Wolverine in it or whatever. But that one's actually a movie people really wanted to see, right? Because it's a property that Disney didn't own before. And they're just making the third movie. And now they're going to connect it to the X-Men somehow, which is really the X-Men is going to be the one last thing that they have outside of that they can bring in people that are not total comic book fans.
Right.
And I mean, the fact that they're signing Robert Downey Jr. back and all this stuff because they may really have to do an old Avengers movie to get people back into the damn theater to watch their movies. That's not good. Like
they really thought, all right, we can get through the first gen, and then we got them all hooked on, and now we're gonna bring in all these new characters, and they didn't. There's just too many to try to introduce all at once, and it's been a mess. So you switch this now back to video games, which this podcast is. Can I say the same thing about Like a Dragon? As somebody that's not into that series, there are too many of your goddamn games this year.
I disagree because you do need the Kiryu story of what happens in between so that you can lead up to
the second Like a Dragon game that's come out this year, right? And we have one more in February.
To be fair, that Like a Dragon Ishin game is a remake of an old ass game that has nothing to do with none of the other stuff.
As somebody that's not into that series, I'm goddamn confused as to which is which and what is coming out and who is what. And
okay, so like if you played Like a Dragon, the Like a Dragon game, the Yakuza 7, that game matters. The Like a Dragon Gaiden that just came out a couple weeks ago, that game is the in-between game that tells you what Kiryu was doing and why he shows up in Like a Dragon 7. And then Like a Dragon 8, because it has both of them as the main characters, that's why you need to play Like a Dragon Gaiden. And it has the demo of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth if you beat Like a Dragon Gaiden. So it makes sense. Like I'm actually wanting to beat Like a Dragon Gaiden. Yeah, no, I get you. I really hope that they don't have, as much as it would be cool to get Kenzen or like a collection of these other games that never came out, like the Souls one that's like with zombies or whatever, that would be cool. But like I think after Infinite Wealth, like let it have a rest, right? Like let it. Yeah.
Or at least spread them out a little bit. To have Gaiden come out now and then Infinite Wealth's what, February?
You know what's so crazy is that you have Infinite. This is the same company that owns Atlas. They have Infinite Wealth coming out on the 26th of January. And then like the next week, they have Persona 3 Reload coming out. Like who does that? You're like destroying your own games here. Like I get it, Persona 3 Remake is on Game Pass, so that's going to help. You have to actually go buy Infinite Wealth if you're an Xbox owner, but it's like still, it's like I get it, they're two different genres and maybe perhaps two different people, but they're both RPGs, and you really do want people to play both. Like that's so weird. Like why wouldn't you space those out? Like
yeah, that's all I ask is put one out in June and put one out in December or January and just not 2 months apart. Like at least with Final Fantasy, like Remake would come out and then the next year you get the Yuffie stuff and then
exactly. Yeah.
And then
Crisis
6 months
came out.
6 months later.
A year and a half later, we're getting Rebirth, right? Like you had enough time.
But even mixing out the genres, like Yuffie came out in the summer, Crisis Core came out in December, and then you went right back to the summer to get Final Fantasy 16, and now in fact, it's like at least go half a year. That's all I ask. If you're going to come out with multiple games in a genre, like split it up. I say that, and Mario came out with 2 games in a month, but
right. And to
but
be
talk about
fair,
two different
two
games.
different games,
Yeah,
right?
two
Like,
different
yeah.
games. But I'm
But
just saying, it's like, so you had the remake of the one plus the side story plus the next game all within a 3-month period, and just all I'm hearing is like a dragon, like a dragon, like a dragon, and my brain's going, I can't.
and that's what's
I
weird
played
is
Judgment, I played a little bit of Like a
yeah,
Dragon, and my brain doesn't compute anymore.
that's what's so weird. Also, is that Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, and Persona 3 Reload are both RPGs, both turn-based RPGs. Like it's like, why would you have them release a week within each other? I don't know, but whatever. It's like, um, that being said, let's talk about some other things that did happen this week. Um, Nintendo had an indie world that they usually kind of always do at the end of December that kind of sets the stage for some things that are coming either within that week or that day, and then some things you can look forward to till next year. Probably when you talk about like names, even though look, I love Outer Wilds, I think it's one of the most creative and great like games when you talk about like indie titles that Annapurna has come out with. I'm kind of in that mode of like, hey, this is cool that you're going to get a whole thing with the game and the expansion, the Echoes of the Eye, and it's going to be an Archaeology edition coming out on December 7th, so like in less than a month. If you only have a Switch, like that's great and all, but yeah, I'm kind of like overhearing things about Outer Wilds for a while. Shantae getting a GBA game that never got finished and put on the Switch. Shantae Advanced Risky Revolution. That's cool. I'm kind of okay on the Shantae games. I'm not huge on them.
They're fun. I played a couple of them.
I found that On Your Tail game kind of interesting, like a life sim that has like, I guess, furry animals in it, and it's also like the detective story. That's an exclusive that's coming next year. It's cool. It looks cool. There wasn't. That's the one thing I'll say for this indie thing. There wasn't like the game that, oh my god, I gotta have this game out of this. They all kind of like followed the similar trend of like visual novels with a or like there was one How that came out that day that's like a strategy game that also has it has like sort of like a watercolor look to it and stuff like that. A lot of the games are like very artsy because they're trying to work with the Switch and knowing that you can't do the big graphics or whatever. But yeah, a lot of puzzle adventure games, things like that. Nothing wrong with that, right? Just yeah, not necessarily like the things that are like totally my bag. I guess. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I just kind of have mixed around. It's okay.
Yeah. Blade Chimera probably maybe the one that might most appeal to you. It's like a sort of like Metroidvania Mega Man ish game.
Like I told you, I didn't even know this indie thing happened, so I was kind of mixing back and forth. That was one that made me stop and check out. I might check out that game.
One for me that I want to highlight because I keep seeing it. Like I said, Moonstone Island. It has creature collecting and dungeon crawling and deck life building and life sim. It's like I got a gazillion things going on, and the life sim part kind of makes me not want to do it. But then it's got all the other things that I do like, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know. We'll see. I love the fact that Braid is getting the anniversary edition. I love Braid, so glad that that's coming. Like I guess soonish. I've sort of been intrigued by that Gecko Gods like puzzle game, and then a shout out to people that haven't played it yet. But Planet of Lana is great, and you should go check it out. Another game that was really good that came out this year. It's on Game Pass also. If you want to check it out, it's like one of those. It's a puzzle game, but it's also like a side scroller, and you kind of it's more about also like the story. That's kind of told in a way that's not like directly at you, but you're also sort of you're trying to figure out how to get through this with another character, and it is interesting. I liked it for what it is. One of those, like, I'm glad that Game Pass was able to get that kind of thing. So yeah, I wouldn't say underwhelming, but just kind of an okay Nintendo Indie World. There have been better ones, for sure. And then we have to get into the sad part of, or well, I guess just really quick. There's now an animated The Witcher show coming to Netflix.
Yeah, that's the saddest news we've had.
No,
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, now that we're gonna have to deal with Liam Hemsworth being Geralt starting with season 4, I really think that I heard a lot of people that once they found that out, they're like, I think I'm kind of done, and they didn't keep watching it, or they've watched season 3 and they're like, okay, this has really gone downhill. So I don't know what that's going to mean for season 4, as far as like how much longer that show's going to go on. But the animated show looks really nice, and they have the original voice actor of Geralt, Doug Cockle, coming back to voice him, so that's great. Maybe that can start a whole series by itself. You never know with Netflix, the way that they cancel things. So,
right.
Yeah, but I guess you can enjoy more Witcher the show there from Netflix. But yeah, there's some sad stuff here with the layoffs. Digital Bros, which is the parent company of 505 Games, they're the publisher of big games like Control, right? And Puzzle Quest also, and some other games. They had to lay off. They have a lot of offices in very different countries. They had to lay off 30% of their staff due to basically the way that gaming has changed now, where we've really gotten into more IP based stuff, franchise based stuff is what's selling. You're not getting a lot of the new IP are not that they've ever sold extremely well, but it's really getting to the point because of, gaming is expensive, right? And because of inflation and because of all the stuff, people are going more for the known quantities and not so much for the let's try something new, especially when we're talking about some of these let's try something new, like say Forspoken is $70. And it's funny because that game is not necessarily terrible, right? It's just that because it was a new IP, people are able to like kind of hand wave it away for the other things that are not necessarily the gameplay part. Right. And that's, I think, what 505 is feeling here is that after the pandemic, where people have gone outside again and they're not paying attention to gaming like that, where you have people that were never gamers all of a sudden gaming because it was something they could do and be inside. And now they're kind of like, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to focus on sequels and new versions of previously released games and things like that. And it's kind of sad to see, honestly. That's the thing that I feel like we don't focus up enough on when we were talking about the Game Awards. Like, Game of the Year is all sequels.
All sequels.
Right? How many franchises are involved in all of these things? Like, okay, I'll put Baldur's Gate 3 to the side because it's so different from all the other games that are sequels, and it's not like it's been a long time since Baldur's Gate 2. It's not like Baldur's Gate 2 just came out. Even Alan Wake had a long period, but still there's a lot of Alan Wake DNA in there. That's what sucks. Like, I hate seeing this stuff because that's what that leads to. Is it's very much like the movie industry. A lot of, how can we remake this? How can we reboot this? How can we, and it's like, really, this is where we're going, as great as Dead Space Remake is, when we get to Dead Space 2 or 3 being remade, is it really going to have the same cachet?
No.
That's, yeah.
But, I mean, if they came out with something completely different, like you said, there's so much risk involved. Sometimes you're going to get a hit and it's going to go fantastic, and you've created, and that's the fun thing is, you come out with something new, then you create a whole new franchise that you milk for decades to come. And it is that risk. And a lot of companies, especially right now with how tight everything is becoming. That, I mean, every other day you're hearing of layoffs. We're talking about it. I think every single time I've been on the show, we have a story of a different company doing layoffs.
Mhm.
It's very difficult, and I as somebody who's never been in the video game industry itself, but is just a viewer on the side, you got to think that there's such like ebbs and flows anyways with the way game development is. So
Yeah,
especially if you're in a company that doesn't have project after project after project where one person can go, okay, I finished here, I'm moving right into this, there's going to be layoffs and then rehires when another project comes on. And it just seems kind of that's the way this industry goes. But we're just in that really tough point right now where money's kind of hit the wall. And I think a lot of companies, like you said, saw the big boom that happened with the pandemic and maybe overestimated the amount of people that were going to stick around now with this genre.
exactly.
And now the numbers are going back down. You never want to see people lose their jobs, but hopefully they can get on their feet. The amount of people that I've seen, either you or any of the other people that I follow on Twitter, retweeting people that are saying, "Hey, I got laid off, but if you're looking for this," and the amount of times it's been like 7 years of the same job and they've been laid off, it's really tough to see. But hopefully they find new places or new indie places, build up from this, and then they can
Yeah.
go off in their own creative ways. But like you said, it's such a risky venture in itself to come up with a new idea, especially when you are known for a specific brand. So yeah, it's just the way of the world for sure in all industries.
No, for sure. And I think that's something else we need to look at is this is happening in all industries. It's not just here. Obviously,
Mhm.
it's a focus for us because this is a gaming podcast.
Right.
But that's another thing that I think people lose perspective of sometimes when we're talking about, like, listen, we understand that Twitter is bigger than just gaming and there is layoffs happening everywhere, especially in like the journalism field, not
Oh
just
yeah.
gaming journalism, but other journalism, period. Sometimes I go, you know what? Thank God I didn't go all the way into that sometimes because all I ever see is people getting laid off.
Mhm.
And, and it sucks because it's like that is what I wanted to do. I wanted to eventually work at like Game Informer and work at all these places. And I think it's great. Like I do see some of our friends, people that we've had on this show before, they keep moving up or they keep getting new freelance opportunities. And I think that that's awesome. Charlie Whatchels that we've had on the show before, he, got to be doing stuff with IGN and CNN this year and stuff like that. And I think that's awesome. But there is way more stories of people losing their jobs. And then
Mhm.
even like, we've had new websites start up and new things start up. And I think, like people that left Escapists, and now they do the Second Wing Group and they're doing like amazing numbers right off the bat. And people left Kotaku and started Aftermath. They're doing great so far. We'll see how that goes,
Mhm.
later on when, do you lose subscribers for something or whatever. But it's good to see that there are good things happening, but it feels like, man, again, like I've said, especially with this next story of Embracer Group, dropping 5% of its workforce, which is almost around 900 people, which with this announcement, it has made it 7,000 game developers that have lost their jobs
Jeez.
this year, which is an incredible number, some kind of gaming involvement. And then even in this story, we're talking about 511 developers lost their jobs within Embracer in this year. 202 of them not being developers, but they were also part of those companies. It's insane, and they're talking about we're going to write down more, right? Because Mark and I talked about Free Radical. They were supposed to be doing a new Time Splitters game, and that game is probably going to be wrote down at some point. The studio is going to be closed, very much like what happened to Volition with Saints Row
Mhm.
and Campfire Cabal, and supposedly Gearbox is up for sale, even though we don't know who's going on with that. We've had layoffs of Crystal Dynamics and other things. Like it's a lot. Embracer has laid off a lot because they lost that payment from the Saudi Savvy Group,
Mhm.
and they're a team that were like an amalgamation of so many different people, and it's like it's scary because it shows that it doesn't matter how big you are, you can fall, and even all the big studios have dropped people, right? And gosh, I really hope next year is a different tune for this, because you hate seeing it.
Right.
You hate seeing this happening. And so many games that could have happened from Embracer that are not going to happen now because they have to write them down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we're hoping that next year is a different thing. Hopefully, the great games continue, and it looks like they are, with the amount of, like, starting from the middle of January on, we have bangers already coming out. Even that I mean, I love Prince of Persia, and then the fact that they went back to the 2D look for that new Prince of Persia game that they're making, that looks freaking great. And that's the first one that's kind of like, oh man, I might want to pick this up. And then you look at the end of January, beginning of February to the end of February, it's like, oh my God, where does this stop already?
No, and it won't. And the moment you're like, all right, now here's a window where not a lot of games will come out, and then the Game Awards will change that with announcements. And
yeah, like that's the cool thing too, is this year. This year we have a lot of, like, what are they going to announce at the Game Awards, right? Because there's some things that are known, but we have a lot of, like, we don't really know when this is coming or when that's coming. Especially like after Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it's kind of like wide open as to what is going to be happening next year. But again, they have stacked that spring season already, where it's like, my lord, could you give our wallets a break for a little bit? Like, it would be really nice. But there are some, aside from Persona 5 Tactica and Super Mario RPG Remake that came out today, there are other things that are coming in this week that perhaps you should pay attention to. There's the Naruto plus Boruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections, which has a new story mode along with, it's sort of like remade, remastered. So it's going to have some of the old game stuff in there, but it does have a new story. There's a Bluey video game that now Microsoft is trying to get people to get into their sweepstakes. They're going to Bluey Xbox Series X. So there's that.
Really?
Yes.
Do not show my daughter. Do not show my daughter.
I'm not kidding.
At all.
Yeah, it's there. The In Stars in Time, which looks like if Undertale and like another turn-based RPG had a baby, it looks great. That comes out on the 20th. I might have to really consider that. It looks awesome. There's a Warhammer Realms of Ruin game and Pathfinder game that's coming out. That Jurassic Park, like, classic game collection is also coming on the 22nd. This cool little indie game called Wordless is coming that they've shown at some events that people should check out for sure. I think that might be coming to Game Pass. I'm not sure. So there is some cool stuff coming in the next week, but after that, it kind of finally we get a little bit of a lull. It feels like, until we get to next year, which I think is severely needed with the holidays coming and people wanting to catch up on stuff where we do the Game of the Year things. But hey, if you're playing Persona 5 Tactica or Mario RPG, especially if it's your first time playing Mario RPG like me, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think about the game. Even those that are like revisiting it, it would be cool to hear what you think. But thank you, Rainey, so much for being on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always appreciate you when you can be on. Hopefully we'll get to have you on before the year ends again. But we'll be back, like I said, on Wednesday, probably with Mark. He'll give his big rant on Final Fantasy 16 that I'm sure he has coming from everything I've seen. We'll probably go over some Game Awards stuff again, and we'll see what's been happening till then before we get to Thanksgiving. So if you follow, like, subscribe on the YouTube channel to get the show when it first comes out. It will come out on audio, eventually on podcast. go find Randy on the R&R Sports Report on YouTube as well. You know, he does awesome show if you like sports with his friend Robert, and then some other of our friends show up in there and make it fun. So definitely go check that out too. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week, everybody. Later.